Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. They say the woods are quiet when they want you to hear something. I didn't believe that until I camped alone in the Bighorn Mountains. It was mid-September, that strange in-between time where summer gives up its last breath and fall comes creeping in like a ghost through the trees. The days were warm enough for a t-shirt, but when the sun dipped, the cold came quickly, sharp and thin as a razor. I've been hiking for most of the afternoon, about 6 miles off the beaten path, which is exactly how I liked it. No cell signal, no humans, just me, the trees, and the slow, steady rhythm of nature. I pitched my tent near a creek that babbled, just loud enough to lull you into comfort. The smell of pine was everywhere, thick, sweet, almost medicinal. There were no signs of recent campers. No cigarette butts, no trash. Just nature, clean and untouched. It should have been peaceful. But there was something off that night. I couldn't put my finger on it first. Maybe it was the stillness, the kind of stillness that presses against your chest like a weight. No owls hooting, no crickets, not even wind in the trees. Just silence. I crawled into my sleeping bag around 10 p.m., flashlight off, just letting the darkness wrap around me. I dozed in and out for a bit, but somewhere around 2 a.m., I woke up. No nightmare, no sound, just awake. And then I heard it, a rustling, faint at first, coming from outside the tent. I told myself it was wind or a small animal, maybe a raccoon. But then the rustling turned into a crawl, slow, deliberate. Something moving just inches from where my head lay inside that thin nylon wall. It wasn't the heavy plodding of a bear. I'd heard that before in Glacier Park. And it wasn't the scurrying of a squirrel or a fox. This was careful, as if whatever was out there didn't want to be heard, but couldn't help it. I held my breath, listening. The thing circled the tent once, then twice. I could hear it brush against the fabric, dragging what sounded like fingers or claws. Not scratching, just gliding. And then came the zipper. It twitched, not opened, just tugged. Once. A short metallic sound that sliced through the silence like a scream in a library. I didn't move. My flashlight was under my pillow, but I felt like if I reached for it, the thing would know. I was already sweating despite the cold, my breath hot and ragged, clouding up the air inside the tent. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. I could feel it watching me, waiting. Then I heard breathing. It was wet. That's the only way I can describe it. Like someone had a mouth full of mucus, struggling for air. A gurgling, wheezing inhale followed by a slower, heavier exhale. Then something pressed against the tent wall, the side near my feet. Not a hand, not a paw, a face. I could see the shape of it through the nylon. A human-sized outline, but warped, like the features weren't in the right place. No noise, just that slick, horrible breath and the soft pressure of its face against the thin barrier between us. That was it. My brain snapped. I screamed, loud and broken, like a dying animal. I grabbed the flashlight, unzipped the tent from the opposite side, and bolted into the woods in nothing but socks and boxers. The night was freezing. The forest floor was rough and cold and full of sharp rocks, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I didn't think. I just ran. My legs moved on instinct, and my mind was screaming one word over and over: run, run, run. I didn't stop until the first hint of daylight spilled through the trees. My legs gave out near a ranger trail. I collapsed, sobbing, bloody feet and all. Some hours later, a hiker found me and got a park ranger. I could barely speak, but I convinced him to go back with me. We hiked the 6 miles, slowly, and I'll never forget the ranger's face when we reached my campsite. My tent was ripped wide open, but from the inside, the fabric was shredded like something had torn its way out, not in. My sleeping bag was slashed across the middle, deep gashes that looked more like claws than a knife. There were no footprints, no animal droppings, no drag marks, just my torn up tent and the strange imprint of something kneeling in the dirt near where the face had pressed into the nylon. The ranger said it must have been a bear. That I panicked and imagined the rest. But bears don't unzip tents, and they don't breathe like that. They don't wait. They don't watch you while you sleep. I haven't been camping since. I don't go near forests. I don't even sleep in silence anymore. Because in the quiet, I can still hear it. That wet breathing. Waiting. Story 2. In the summer of 2016, I went camping with 3 friends in Mount Hood National Forest in Oregon. It was one of those spur-of-the-moment things. Toss a few tents in the trunk, load up on beef jerky and cheap beer, and hit the road thinking you're invincible just because you've got a lighter and a Swiss Army knife. We were in our 20s, stupid with confidence and thirsty for isolation. The farther off the grid, the better. We'd originally planned to stay at a designated campground near Trillium Lake, but it was overcrowded and loud. Too many RVs and families with screaming kids. So we decided to wander, follow a narrow trail that branched off the main route, and see where it took us. We weren't hardcore hikers or anything. We just wanted a place where no one else was. A few miles in, we stumbled on a clearing. It was like the forest had opened its arms just for us. There was a calm, glassy lake nestled in the trees, still and quiet, like it hadn't been touched in years. The air smelled like moss and smoke. It wasn't on any map we had, not on Google, not on the paper one buried in the glove box. But there were signs that people had camped there once. A stone fire pit, a few rusted tent stakes, old embers, long cold. It felt abandoned, but in a peaceful way. We set up camp, cooked sausages over the fire, drank, talked about nothing and everything. You know how it is when you're out in nature, far from cell towers and obligations. You start to believe the world outside doesn't exist. By midnight, the forest was completely silent. Not the normal quiet, either. No wind, no bugs, no crackling firewood. Just nothing. Like the trees were holding their breath. Then we heard it. Music. Faint, distant, and strange. It sounded like carnival music. Tinny old, like a broken calliope wheezing out a tune from across the lake. It drifted through the trees, soft at first, but getting louder. Not gradually like sound does when someone's walking toward you, but in jerky bursts, like it was skipping through the air. 1 second it was far, the next it was right behind us. We all turned, scanning the woods. "Someone's messing with us," Ryan said. He tried to laugh, but came out dry. None of us moved. It didn't feel like a prank. It didn't feel like anything human. That's when we saw the lights. They flickered deep in the trees, maybe 30 feet off the ground, swinging like lanterns on invisible ropes. No pattern, just wild, random jerks. The light was yellowish white, flickering like candle flames, but brighter. Too bright. We couldn't see what was holding them. And the weirdest part, the air was still dead. No wind, no rustling branches. Whatever was making them sway like that wasn't part of the forest. Pack your stuff, I said, my voice low and sharp. We didn't speak after that. Just moved. Fast. Like prey. Packing in the dark is a nightmare. We dropped things. I left a flashlight behind. Ryan burned his hand, trying to douse the fire too fast. But we got out. We didn't even take the trail. We just followed the slope downhill until we hit the logging road and walked 2 miles to where we'd left the car. No one talked on the drive home, and no one ever brought it up again. But here's the part that still makes me wake up at night, sweating. 2 years later, I was back in Oregon visiting family. Curiosity got the better of me. I borrowed a car and drove back to Mount Hood. I thought, maybe we were drunk. Maybe our minds played tricks on us. I needed to see that place in the daylight. I found the same trail, followed it like muscle memory. The lake was still there, same eerie stillness, same scent of pine and whetstone. But the clearing? Gone. I'm not exaggerating. It was gone, like it had never been there. No fire pit, no tent stakes, no signs of human activity. Just thick underbrush and trees that looked wrong. Younger, like they hadn't been standing 2 years ago. The forest floor was untouched, like no one had ever stepped there. I hiked back to the ranger station. I must have looked pale or scared, because the older guy behind the desk squinted at me like he already knew what I was going to ask. There used to be a clearing near a small lake, about 5 miles east of Trillium. You know it. He hesitated, looked past me, then back at me. That place isn't safe, he said. Used to be people disappeared out there. We don't talk about it anymore. I tried to press him, but he shut down, walked into the back room, and didn't come out. I don't know what we camped in. I don't know what played that music or swung those lights. But I haven't gone camping since. And I won't, because I'm not sure we were supposed to leave. And part of me wonders, if I ever go back again, will it let me leave a second time? Story 3. In 2019, my brother and I went camping deep in Arizona's Prescott National Forest. We hadn't been out in a while. Life had a way of beating us up in our own corners of the world, and this trip was our way of hitting pause. A couple nights off-grid, just us, some beers and a campfire. No phones, no emails, no noise. The first night passed without anything unusual. We set up camp near a clearing surrounded by ponderosa pines and built a fire just before sundown. Coyotes howled in the distance, but that was expected. It was the kind of night that reminded you how damn quiet the world can get when it's not trying to sell you something. On the second night, though, that's when it happened. We'd eaten and were sitting by the fire, sharing old stories, some real, some exaggerated for the sake of brotherly drama, when we heard twigs snapping off to the left. Not loud, not rushed, just deliberate. Step, snap, step, snap. We turned our heads in sync, squinting into the woods. A man stepped out of the trees. He wasn't close at first, maybe 20 feet away, just standing there, watching. My brother slowly stood up and reached for the hatchet we kept near the woodpile. The man didn't move. He just raised one hand, palm out like a tired hitchhiker. Mind if I sit a while? he asked. Cold out here. His voice was raspy and low, like he hadn't spoken much in years. He wore filthy jeans, boots caked in red dirt, and a jacket 3 sizes too big for him. The hood covered most of his face, but I could see a scraggly gray beard and sunken lips. I didn't know what to say. Something about him felt wrong. Not threatening exactly, but out of place, like he'd wandered in from a different time. But my brother, always the brave one, gestured toward the fire. Sure, he said carefully. Have a seat. The man nodded once and stepped forward. I swear I didn't hear his boots touch the ground. No crunching leaves. No snapping twigs now. He just sort of glided, sat down cross-legged across the fire from us. He didn't speak again for a long while, just stared into the flames like he was watching something the rest of us couldn't see. Occasionally he rubbed his hands together, even though the night wasn't that cold. After a few minutes, he spoke without looking at us. Camped here once before, years back, buried my dog out back. There was something sharp in his tone, not sadness, something closer to resentment. I glanced at my brother, who just nodded slowly, playing it cool. The man leaned forward a bit, voice dropping. Hope you don't come digging tonight. We laughed. It was one of those awkward, polite chuckles you give when someone says something weird and you don't know what else to do. But the man didn't laugh, didn't even smile. He just kept staring into the fire, rocking slightly now, back and forth, back and forth. Then he said, I buried the last guy out here too. That was it. No build-up, no grin, just flat, cold. My blood ran ice. My brother stopped moving entirely. The night got quieter, like even the trees were listening. Excuse me, my brother asked. The man didn't respond. He just stood up, not in a normal way, more like rose, as if he weighed nothing. No effort, no sound, just up. My brother reached for the hatchet again, slower this time. But before either of us could say a word, the man turned and walked toward the tree line. And then he was gone. I don't mean he vanished behind a tree. I mean he vanished, disappeared. 1 second he was 5 feet from the shadows, and the next, nothing. No footsteps, no sound, just the hiss of the fire and the wind sighing through the needles overhead. We didn't sleep that night, not 1 second. We sat with our backs to the fire, facing opposite directions, gripping the hatchet and a hunting knife like they were made of holy silver. Every crack of a branch made us flinch. At first light, we searched the area, walked all around the edge of the clearing. Nothing. No tracks. No disturbed dirt. No sign of anyone or anything having been there. I looked for a grave, for any kind of mound. Nothing. Even the pine needles hadn't been disturbed. When we got back to town, I asked a ranger at the local office if anyone lived out in that part of the woods. He looked at me strange and said, not since the old miner cabins burned down in the 70s. Nobody camps out there anymore. Locals say it's cursed. I asked what kind of curse. He shrugged and said, depends who you ask. Some say the land's got a memory. Others say a man went mad out there, killed his dog, then himself. They say he never left. I didn't respond, just nodded, thanked him, and walked away. My brother and I don't talk about that night anymore. Sometimes we pretend it didn't happen. He got married last year, bought a house, had a baby girl. I visit sometimes. We barbecue, watch football. But one time, when he was walking me to my car, he stopped and looked me dead in the eye. You remember what he said, right? He asked. I nodded. He leaned in, whispered, I buried the last guy out here, too. Then he smiled, but it wasn't funny. He was just scared. Same as me. I haven't camped since.